So good. All right, guys, it's Ruslan here. We are live in the Christian quarter of Jerusalem. We just came out of the Armenian quarter of Jerusalem, which was insane. And I'm here with some new friends, Tony, Jasmine. How do you pronounce your last name?
Johnson's-Young.
Okay, Johnson's-Young. Okay, so you are Armenian. I am Armenian.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about the history in the Armenian quarter of Jerusalem. It blew my mind. You walked us through it earlier.
Right.
Unpack that a little bit.
Well, Armenia became the first Christian nation.
Hold the mic a little closer.
In the year 301. Mm-hmm. So since 301, Armenians have been making their pilgrimages to Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. And since that time, we have had an Armenian quarter, and in time we built it up. We have a church, St. James, that was built in the 12th century. Mm-hmm. Church is intact. It hasn't been touched, hasn't been renewed. Everything in it is as is. There's no, there's no electricity. It's all oil lamps, natural light. And yeah, that's the pretty much the story.
Now, Armenians have been here since the year 300 because Armenia was the first Christian nation.
Correct.
And after the Armenian genocide of 1915, there was also a ton of Armenians that came here seeking asylum and refugee status.
Correct.
And so when did you and your family come? Because you were born in Jerusalem.
I was born in Jerusalem.
Born and raised in Jerusalem.
Correct. Okay. My great-grandparents came from Turkey. They actually escaped the genocide in 1915 and walked all the way from Turkey to Jerusalem.
That's over 1,000 miles.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then you're talking about a lot of Armenians also settling in neighboring countries. Like you've got a good community in Lebanon and Syria. So a lot of the people that walked settled in these different areas. But the main place for them to come was Jerusalem. So a lot of them came here, but a lot of them settled in different countries neighboring Israel.
Now, initially, there was a huge Armenian community here.
Correct.
How many people at its peak would you say that were Armenian?
We had probably about 20,000, if not more.
20,000 in the old city?
In the old city,
In the old city. So that's a pretty big...
It's a pretty big number, yes.
Pretty big number. And it's slowly dwindled.
Today we have about 800, 900 Armenians.
What happened?
Politics in the country. The region is very complicated. Armenians are not considered Jews, are not considered Arabs. We're really in the middle.
Yeah, we are.
So if you think about it, like the Christians make up 2% of the population in Israel.
Yes.
And the Armenians are a minority within that 2%.
Within the minority, yeah.
So we're like really, really a very small community. So for a lot of Armenians, they decided to leave. They moved to the United States, to Europe, where they thought they'd make a better life for themselves and for their children.
Yeah.
So that's really where a lot of Armenians left. The politics of the region forced a lot of Armenians out.
Wow, that's so interesting. Can you give us a little bit more about some of the history of Armenia that people may not know about and why it's an important nation?
Okay, so I mean, we just said that Armenia is the first
Christian nation.
And that happened in the year 301. We have our own alphabet that we created in the year 405. One of the reasons we created our own alphabet is to translate the Bible into a language that the Armenians can read and write. And then we've got, obviously, the other thing that we talk about is the genocide that happened in 1915. One thing to also mention is because of our faith, Armenians have always been persecuted for that. Armenia was always a powerful country. They had a big kingdom. They're very powerful. After coming to faith, we've been always invaded, always under a different rule, under a different regime.
Constant persecution.
Constant persecution because of our faith. Part of the genocide is not only because we're Armenian, but we're Christians as well.
Christians in the middle of all Islamic nations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's part of it.
Yeah. And if you guys don't know, the reason why me and my family came out to America as refugees is because of the persecution against Armenia, which is in Azerbaijan was the pogroms of Baku, and then we were forced to come out as refugees in 1991. Now, you said the political climate here is complicated.
Right, very complicated.
And Nicole, you do journalism as if you could mention your website for us?
Yeah, it's All Israel News.
All Israel News. And
yeah.
so can you unpack some of the tensions between Armenians, between Arab Christians, which people don't even know that those exist, right? Jewish Christians or post-Messianic Christians in a state in Israel that I believe is 80% Jewish, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a predominantly Jewish state. You have Christians would make up less than 2%. The rest is Muslims. Help us understand and unpack some of the tension politically happening here and how it impacts Christians here.
Okay. So, like you said, Christians are a minority, about 2%. So the Christian vote doesn't necessarily matter nor have a huge impact either way. But I spoke with a lot of Christians leading up to this election, and Christians want to have a voice. They want to have a voice, but they're also very torn. Like, so let's say, to just take it back a step further, Christian may not be what you think, like if you're in another country. Like the Christians here are also mostly Arab and Armenian,
Wow.
and a few other ethnicities, but they're ethnically attached to, they're Arab, and they're most likely, associated with the Palestinians.
Wow.
And so then you have an issue where, okay, but you're an Arab Israeli who's a Christian. But so where do you identify?
Right,
and
right.
I would say that most of them identify still as Palestinian, and so they're not Palestinian in the Palestinian Authority.
Yeah.
But they live in Israel and they have to vote in Israel, and so it's a very complicated and it's a big challenge to your identity.
Yeah.
And so what I found when I spoke with several different Christians, and they identify as Arabs. They want an Arab party representing them. But Arabs, though they're 21% of the population, and most of the Arabs are Muslim, they still have a very low representation in the Knesset. For instance, the ultra-Orthodox Jews, who make up 12% of the population in Israel, have probably, I can't do the math fast enough, but let's say they have like 18 seats of 120 in the Knesset, and the Arabs only have 10. So you can see the disparity, but that's because the Arabs don't vote, because also they identify as Palestinian, not necessarily Israeli. So it's so complicated.
And that's not even scratching the surface
No.
of the Palestinian-Israeli
Right.
conflict, which is
Right.
a whole nother can of worms that we're not going to open in this video.
Not in this video.
And if you're enjoying this video, guys, smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe, because that's important for the algorithm. And I'm trying to get these two on YouTube. Okay, that's the ploy for this video, because their story is so unique. Nicole is Italian from Queens, who met Tony while she was working in Jerusalem over 20 years ago. He's Armenian. They got married. Fascinating stories. I'm trying to get him on YouTube. Smash the like button, and then leave a comment if you guys want to see him on YouTube. Now, Israelis who are Palestinian, Arabs who are Christians.
Yes.
That sounds very complicated.
It's so complicated. I don't, it's so hard to wrap your mind around it. But let's just say that many of them have been here for hundreds of years. And I think also another thing, like if you're kind of like I'm American, and we don't have this attachment to the land that a lot of people in the Middle East do. And when, like for instance, you saw Jerusalem Santa's house, he's been here for hundreds of years. Wow. His family dates back hundreds of years. They have some kind of attachment.
A Christian guy too.
Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's Christian. And they have some kind of attachment to the Holy Sepulchre.
Yeah.
Like they have some kind of history in the Holy Sepulchre, which is this ancient church where many people believe was the tomb of Jesus, and where he rose again. And so anyway, so there is this very deep connection to the land as well. So now, I mean, I don't know if you wanted me to get into the elections this year.
Yeah. And just to recap, guys, we're here with Israel Collective. They took us to see a Arab Palestinian pastor that his father started a church in Bethlehem. He's been persecuted. He's been beat up for the faith, and he actually pastors in Jerusalem. And we sat yesterday with a Palestinian refugee who's culturally Muslim and heard his story, and that blew our mind. So this is a very layered, nuanced, complicated situation. And so I want you to talk about the politics. So when you start talking about the politics, here in this region, politics, nationality, faith, it all overlaps, right? It's not clean and compartmentalized like it is in the States. Unpack some of the politics, because you're like the conservatives is who got reelected, but the conservatives give more welfare programs to the Orthodox Jew. I was like, whoa, slow it down for me. So help me understand politically. You guys just had an election.
Yeah.
It's like the 6th election in a couple years or something crazy.
Fifth in 3.5 years.
5th election in 3.5 years. And unpack the implications of that, and then potentially the implications of that for Christians in this region.
Okay. All right. So, first of all, I want everybody to throw out of their minds this whole issue of left wing, right wing.
Yeah.
Because people are saying, oh, it's a right wing government. And, for the most part, there is a very strong right wing element in the government. Yes. For sure. But then I kind of laugh because I said the ultra-Orthodox parties are anything but right-wing fiscally. They're totally not. They're welfare parties that are...
And that's because the ultra-Orthodox men, not all of them, but a lot of them don't work and study Torah all day.
Right. And also don't serve in the army.
And don't serve in the army, which is mandatory if you're an Israeli citizen for 3 years if you're a man, 2 years if you're a woman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, so instead, a lot of these ultra-Orthodox parties are actually seeking the best interests of their communities, which is great for them. They have very strong politics and opinions and what they want and stuff. So anyway, so that they're making up a very good percentage. Like, I don't know the final numbers, but it's probably around like 16 seats of this block, and then and then a lot of the people that are like left out of this particular coalition, because for a coalition you need 61 seats minimum of the 120. You need a majority, so 61. So a lot of them are a lot of them that are on the outside now are right wing. They're right wing secular, or they're right wing, and of course, again, you can't do the American Christian thing and say what is secular, what is religious, because it's not the same here.
It's not the same thing.
Because here, religious takes on many different forms, and also it's more rabbinical, and it's not the religious evangelical. Abortion's not a big issue here. It's not a political issue whatsoever. So, for instance, that's one of the major things that just delineates the left and right. So how does this affect Christians? So first of all, most of the Christians I spoke to really wanted an Arab party representing them.
That's wild.
Yeah.
To say that. Wow.
Yeah.
Keep going. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Interestingly enough, so I'll tell you, so there's 3 Arab parties, and one is Islamist. So they didn't want them.
Okay. Fair enough.
But the Islamist party was actually in the coalition last time, and they didn't really make a big they didn't really put an Islamic agenda out there, so they didn't really have such a bad either way, whatever. They didn't have an effect either way on the Jewish state. But what has happened now is with the election, the parties that have gotten in have very much reacted to, it's a reaction to, there's been a rise in terrorism. There's been this Islamic party in the Knesset, and a lot of the people now are saying, like, okay, it's time that we want a Jewish identity. We have to go back to our Jewish identity. And I heard a very interesting analyst who said this was a vote between being Israeli or being Jewish. And the secular people say, we're Israeli, we're proud to be Israeli, we're okay with being Israeli, but we're pluralistic and we accept everybody.
Sure.
But the Jewish identity is, we are a Jewish state, and Judaism is what we are standing on. So I think it's throwing off now a lot of the non-Jews in the country to say, like, okay, what does that mean for me?
Right, because what I notice is a lot of diversity, but a lot of diversity doesn't always mean a lot of inclusion of the Christian here.
Right.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So last question, Tony, for you.
Yep.
Considering your history with being Armenian, being born here, everything we just talked about, you guys are evangelicals. What is God doing in Jerusalem with Christians?
It's a good question. I think for me, mostly, I'm more focused on, let's say, the Armenian quarter. And I think for me personally, I feel that right now our calling, I'm going to talk about us, is to really bring out the Armenian quarter and to reveal the Armenian quarter to people, because I think it's a closed quarter. Nobody knows about it.
Yeah. And closed meaning that, like, we couldn't have gone there. Well, I'm Armenian, but you took us there.
Right.
You took Pastor Jeff, Pastor Mike, Sean Cannell.
You can't go there without.
We can't just walk in there. Yeah.
Right. So I just want to open that up, and I want to reveal the Armenian quarter to people. I think it is important. Especially being the first Christian nation in the world, I think there was a lot there, and there's a lot to bring forth. There's a lot to bring out of it. So I think I'm just talking from our point of view. I think that's what God wants us to do at this point. So that's what we're really
And I would say even when we were walking through there, why I think that's important is because I think Armenia as a nation is an amazing apologetics showing of God's sovereignty over that country, the history, you were talking about they thought James's head was there.
Right.
Like there's so much. If we just remove all the other speculation, the fact that Armenia has been Christian for this long, has a written language because they wanted to translate the Bible, it's been preserved this long, I think is actually a great apologetics lesson for succession in church history that I think sometimes we just don't think about, right? But when you can show these little nations that God's preserved, these little people groups, and they're here in the middle of all of it, like it's so incredible. What do you think the God's doing here with Christians right now?
I think Christians are right now having to reevaluate like what it means to be a Christian and how to live in a country. Christians have always been a minority, but I think there's a reckoning that has come. And it's not just the indigenous Christians, but also Jews who believe in Jesus, Messianic Jews, because the time right now is like, it feels like things have shifted, especially with this government. Maybe the government won't be as polarizing as people expect, or as right-wing, or far right, or extremist, or however you want to categorize it. But I think it's a time of really knowing who you are, and I hope people will dig deep into their faith and really start to understand it, and that it will bring like a revival of the communities here, because Christians are, in Israel they're not dwindling like in other Middle Eastern countries, but there's always the danger of that happening. We're on the precipice of its extinction in the Middle East, and I really hope that this doesn't happen, because this is where it all began.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much. Hit the like on this video. Be praying for Israel. Be praying for the Christians in Israel, and that ultimately revival would happen. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to see another video with me, Pastor Mike, Sean Cannell, praying in the Western Wall, at the Western Wall, we'll pin that up somewhere over here. All right, I'll see you guys later. Peace.